Welcome back to Half the Battle. I'm your host, as always, Daniel Levy. Your guest co-hosts, James Blissett and Andrew Gombas. Today, we're going to talk about UFC 314, Alexander Volkanovski versus Diego Lopes. And my friends, it's going down this Saturday night live at the Casillas Center in Miami, Florida. You got the all-time great Alexander Volkanovski taking on the potent finisher, Diego Lopes. And my friends, let's not waste any time at all. Let's get right down to business, because in this main event, we got the former champ, Alexander Volkanovski. He's 26-4, taking on Diego Lopes, who's 26-6. Currently, they got it. Alexander Volkanovski, -120. The comeback on Diego Lopes is +100. Gombas, I know if these were the odds a few years ago, it would have been max bet city on max bet season on Volk. Now, it still might be for some people. How do you feel about this, considering, Volk's current state?
Yeah, I would fall in the category as one of those people. I feel like he should be a big favorite here. Obviously, got knocked out by Topuria. But that being said, Topuria is, in my opinion, a pound-for-pound top 3 or 5 guy. Volk was the favorite going into that fight. Wasn't like it was uncompetitive up until that point. I think 5 rounds favors him massively. I just think he's a much better fighter, even at this stage of his career. Obviously, Lopes hits hard. He's dangerous. You have to, mind your P's and Q's with him, especially the first 2 rounds. I think, he could land a big shot, but outside of that, I don't really see him having much success in terms of, winning minutes here. Yeah, I think Volk is probably one of his easier stylistic matchups over the last 5 or 10 years. I like Volk here.
James Blissett?
Yeah, I like Volk as well, man. I'm not super confident. I wouldn't say he should be a big favorite, like Andrew said, but I definitely think he should be a lot bigger favorite than he currently is. I think -120 when I went to sleep last night. Haven't checked it this morning. I think the main thing in this fight, we don't really need a deep breakdown. Yes, we can speak about some of the stylistics on the feet. For example, Volk needs to be very careful in close quarters, especially early, because Diego Lopes does hit hard. He does have good boxing. He has short, tight hooks and some long-range strikes as well, But I think the most important thing to speak about in this fight is not all of the stylistics, because we have a lot of data on the stylistics. I think it's kind of easy to see who's the better striker over 15, 25 minutes. I think it's easy to see who's the better grappler, more dangerous grappler, but also can stay safe, and better wrestler is Volk. The most important thing is, where is Volk in his career? Where is he washed or not? So 50% of me is like, okay, this guy just got beat by Islam Makhachev and Ilia Topuria. They may go down as one of the greatest fighters, 2 of the greatest fighters in MMA history, right? And that's not hyperbole. I think everyone in the chat would agree with that. So on the one hand, 50% of me is like, man, it doesn't matter. You can get finished by Makhachev coming off the couch. You can get finished by the best fighter in the sport, Ilia Topuria. It doesn't mean anything, right? It doesn't mean he's going to get beat against Lopes. But then 50% of me is saying, we don't know his true level. He's 35 years old. He is coming off 2 brutal knockouts.
36.
And although they was against the best fighters in the sport, I still don't know his level based on those fights, right? So maybe he has dropped down. And at 35 years old, coming off 2 KOs, the fire, I don't think the fire is there as it once was. Of course not. And at the end of the day, the vision moves on. Life moves on. Things move on. So it's very hard to judge his real level. So I think we have to be somewhere in the middle. I think even with those things, I think you still have to say that Volk, even if he has dropped down, should be enough to beat Lopes. I think Lopes has big chance to crack him early. One thing I noticed earlier, I was looking through some old bet slips, and I noticed that when I bet on Ilia Topuria to win, I bet on KO round 2 as well. It was +1,200. And I believe that Lopes, is the same price as Ilia Topuria to KO him in round 2, which is kind of funny, and the same price on the money line at +110. So I don't know if that means anything, but I just thought it was kind of interesting. Overall, I think Volk's going to win probably 4th or 5th round stoppage.
Man, I do put stock into the Islam and Topuria fights. I agree with y'all. Those are the 2 best fighters on planet Earth. So therefore, we should just write it off, right? Well, to me, it's not about the fact that he lost to the 2 best fighters on planet Earth. To me, it's what are the lingering, sustaining effects of taking a head kick knockout. By the way, did Kamaru Usman ever come back the same after that head kick knockout? No, he did not. Now let's talk about a long reigning champion when they lose their belt. Guys, I've been watching the sport a very long time. It's a very rare occasion when a long reigning champion loses their belt, let alone by knockout, let alone 2 knockouts in a row, to come back and win another belt. And I get it. As far as the skill level, you're not going to get an argument from me. I mean, Volk would have been minus 500 a couple of years ago, but it's not a couple of years ago. And he's 36, about to turn 37. And Volk is not a power guy. Power is the last thing to go. Volk is a speed and combination guy, volume guy, beautiful stance switching, the best feints in MMA history, but speed is the first thing to go. And although technique wise, so if you're talking about where's the motivation at, actually, I think the motivation is very high. Reason being is Volk is one of these guys that he's going to fight way past his expiration day. He's the kind of guy that you're going to have to drag out of the octagon when he's on a 10-fight skid, BJ Penn style, because Volk does not know when to say when. Volk always wants to fight. That's just who he is. That's why we love him. That's why he was on that incredible run. But now, current state, head kick knockout, vicious knockout against Topuria. I get it, Islam and Topuria, but it's the damage sustained that's the issue for me. Now, as far as Diego Lopes is concerned, so I don't know what to make of this because I've never seen this kind of transformation before. If you watch his regional footage, you're like, yeah, this guy's not even going to get on a win streak in the UFC, let alone hit the top 5, let alone make it to a title fight, right? If you just watch his regional footage, that's the conclusion I came up with. I'm sure you guys will agree with me, but he looks like a brand new man for the last 2 years. I don't know if he's been harvesting the garden of life fruits and vegetables or if he simply feels comfortable in there now, whatever the case may be, but we're not looking at the same guy who lost to Burrito, who lost to these jobbers on his regional scene. And regarding the, he's got a couple of minutes of gas and then, like the Ige fight. Well, first of all, that Ige fight was an 165-pound catch weight that he found out about day of fight day, excuse me. He weighed in to fight Ortega, right? Ortega pulls out the fight. So you're thinking, all right, well, my fight's off. I'm going to go eat whatever I want. Then you get called the day of, Saturday. Hey, Ige is willing to take this fight, 165-pound catch weight. And I mean, Diego's got big brass balls to take a fight like that. I know the third round was a sketchy look, but his very next fight against Ortega, he lands more strikes in round 3 than he does in round 1 or round 2. So I don't know, man. I think that although Volk is going to have a lot of moments, jabs, leg kicks, et cetera, when it's Diego's turn to land, I think he's going to get a lot bigger reactions. And at plus 125 here in 2025, not in 2023, not in 2022, in 2025, I was cool with playing plus 125 on Diego, and I see the line is coming in. So I did my job. May the best man win. Now, next up in the lightweight division, we got a matchup between Michael Chandler, he's 23-9, taking on Paddy, the Baddy Pimblett, who's 22-3. Currently, they got it, Paddy Pimblett, or as we like to say in Brazil, gentlemen, Paddy Pimblett. He's minus 150. He's taking on Mike Chandler, who's plus 130. Guys, it's amazing to see Michael Chandler still at this level because I've been watching this guy, I mean, at least 15 years. When was that first Eddie Alvarez fight? I mean, I remember watching that. That's back when I had one TV. You know what I'm saying? Nowadays, we'll put the Braves game on one TV. We'll put UFC on the other. We'll, if there's other fights on, we'll get it on the other TV. But back then, we only had the recall button, and it was the same night that Shogun fought Dan Henderson the first time, right? So you have Dan Henderson versus Shogun on one channel, and you have Eddie Alvarez versus Michael Chandler 1 on the other channel. Same night, 2 of the best fights in the history of the sport. And we're just going back and forth watching these incredible fights. And that was the first time I was ever exposed to Michael Chandler. And I was like, wow, like this guy's explosive. This guy's dynamic. This guy's a gamer. This guy's a finisher. He was someone to watch. And I watched his entire Bellator career, the ups, the downs. And I'm so happy to see him in the UFC fighting amongst the best. However, that being said, my issue with Chandler, and this is not just an issue I've had in his UFC fights, because I know a lot of the noobs are like, well, he's just been fighting the best of the best in the UFC. Guys, the stuff I'm about to mention has been going on since the Bellator days. This man red lines badly, whether he's eating calf kicks when he gets hit in the face after he exerts a little bit of energy. I don't know what the deal is, but this guy goes into this zombie autopilot mode and completely takes all fight IQ out the window. And I mean, as a fan, it's the most exciting thing you've ever seen. Like that fight with Gaethje where he's literally just standing in front of Gaethje like, come on, like bring it. He's eating knockout blow after knockout blow. He's still standing there. He's waving him on. He's being arrogant. As a fan, I love that shit. But if you had money on Chandler in that fight, I know for a fact you were screaming at your TV. And I don't know for a fact, but I have an inkling that you're going to be screaming at your TV Saturday night too, because the openings are there, right? Paddy fights with his chin up in the air. 3 years ago, he lost to Jared Gordon, according to a lot of people, but that was also 3 years ago, right? Now he's 30 years old. He's in his prime. And I feel like these last two fights have been a step in the right direction for the most part. We have to address the elephant in the room, which is round 3 of Tony Ferguson, him pulling guard in that fight. Listen, I don't have any defense for that, but my explanation is based off Paddy's explanation, and Paddy's explanation was, I literally tried to kill Tony Ferguson to the point where I had nothing left. Now, I watched that fight last night to see, is he telling the truth or not? Dude, he is telling the truth, because not only does he go out there, drops him with a multi-strike combination, we're talking flying knees, we're talking punches, but then he gets on top of Tony Ferguson, right? And he's landing the kind of ground and pound from the heavens. I mean, he's like reaching all the way up, like, and it was like exaggerated ground and pound. I'm like, okay, I see how you blew your load there. But that being said, people only bring that up. You know what they refuse to bring up? They refuse to bring up the fact that Tony Ferguson dropped Michael Chandler in round 1. For whatever reason, it's not counted on the stats. I don't understand how. He 100% dropped Michael Chandler in round 1. And that being said, that fight against Bobby Green, we can talk about the submission all we want, but what I paid attention to most was the striking before the submission. And I love the range management from Paddy there. I love the kicks. I love how he kept Bobby on the outside of that jab. Bobby was trying to close that distance, and he was having a hard time getting in range with Paddy. I was very impressed by that. And obviously the submission was great, but what I cared more about was the striking exchanges. So with Mike, one thing I've noticed about Mike lately, I don't think people understand this, that Mike's about to turn 39 in a couple weeks. Like, is it April 24th or something like that? I'm pretty sure it's in a couple weeks. This man turns 39. I expect, just like Volk, just slightly different because Volk's a much better fighter than Chandler, but I expect Chandler to be a little bit gun shy, kind of like that last fight against Oliveira. So people are going to be like, but that's Oliveira. Guys, what y'all need to understand is that this generation of lightweights, the Poiriers, the Oliveiras, the Gaethjes, these guys are all 35 plus. These guys are not going to be at the top of the division either this time next year or in 2 years. So I get that Chandler's having, competitive fights with the best of the best, but the best of the best, we're not talking about Topuria. We're not talking about Islam Makhachev. We're talking about some all-time greats that are on their way out. That's just the bottom line. That is not bullshit. That is the reality here. And that second Oliveira fight, it was 4 rounds of Chandler getting his ass beat, failing to pull the trigger, looking hesitant, looking slow, and then showing his terrible fight IQ. Not to mention, this guy, I like betting on guys that cheat to win. Michael Chandler is a full-blown cheater, and he's still losing these fights. And the cheating is not just the back of the head shots against Oliveira. What about literally in the first round, when he's throwing jabs, he's throwing eye pokes. He's throwing eye pokes as punches. There's a dude online, I forget his name, that isolated it and broke it down. It's like, goddamn. And then you go back to the Bellator days. I think it was the Marcin Held fight. That guy's a leg lock guy. And Michael Chandler's literally grabbing the fence, not just a regular fence grab. I mean, grabbing the fence and pulling himself up. And it's like, bro, this guy's been a cheater his whole career. We'll see if that works here. But I'm going to go Paddy, man. I think Paddy is being underestimated despite the price. And I'm interested here. So I took him minus 150. Let's get it. Gombas?
Yeah, so my thoughts on Chandler in general, I feel like stylistically he's kind of a guy who he can't be too big of an underdog and he can't be too big of a favorite just because of the nature of how he fights. He's super explosive, strong wrestling. Those are really his positives. He brings that into every fight. So he can knock anybody out. He could potentially wrestle against anyone. But on the flip side, as you mentioned, he has massive issues in terms of durability, in terms of getting hit. Like he, ate over 100 significant strikes against Justin Gaethje. He obviously the first Chandler versus Oliveira fight, he almost finishes Oliveira in round 1. In round 2, they come out and he gets blasted. So he's taking a lot of damage. He's reckless. He gives himself a decent floor, never a high ceiling. Paddy, I've never really been as high on him as the market. I'm also not really one of those people who lined up to fade him with a bunch of bad fighters, but I did kind of feel like even throughout that process, I still felt like I saw a lot of holes in his game. I would imagine they're still there to an extent. I'm sure he's getting better, but there were some things like I don't like his striking defense going backwards, for example. I don't like his game on bottom. That being said, he's taken a lot less damage than Chandler. He's a lot younger than Chandler. I think he has a lot of power. We've seen him put guys out before. He seems pretty durable. Like I mentioned his bad striking defense, but we've seen him eat some crazy. Like he says that scousers don't get knocked out thing, and I kind of believe it. Like he seems to have really good durability. I think it's just one of those fights that really could go either way. I get why Paddy's the favorite. I guess Chandler pass, but for me, it's a pass.
James, I mean, do you think it's going to be the leg kicks of Paddy, the back takes, or do you think it's possibly going to be the one big bomb of Michael Chandler making the difference here?
Could be the bomb of Paddy. I really think that Paddy could catch him on the feet. And the reason I say that is because Michael Chandler is one of the most volatile fighters I've ever seen in the sport. You know, the guy got dropped by Tony Ferguson, as you said. And at that point in his career, Tony Ferguson weren't dropping a lot of people. I know people are going to mention the uppercut against Justin Gaethje, and we would be living in a different timeline if that one had 20 seconds left, because Gaethje was out almost, which is kind of crazy because that was the start of his bad luck run. So I guess he has some power. But, man, if you go back through Chandler's career, you know, let's just say the UFC career, comes in against Dan Hooker. I feel like most people would agree it's close to a 50-50 fight, right? He looks minus 1,000 in that fight, right? Obviously, first round knockout. So that's volatile in and of itself. The second fight, he takes on Charles Oliveira. You know what I mean? Like, you can't get a more volatile fighter than that. Like, he gets his back taken. It should be a wrap against someone like Charles. He spins out the back take, knocks Charles out. Somehow the round ends, and then he gets knocked out. Justin Gaethje fight, that was like minus 200, 400 to not go to decision. And somehow it goes to decision. Volatile again. Tony Ferguson, he gets dropped. Then he gets the craziest front kick in history. Volatile again. And then he fights Dustin Poirier. I bet on him in that fight. I thought I was looking like a genius. You know, both of them almost finished each other like 4 times. And then somehow he ends it in the last minute or in the last couple of minutes of the fight when he had the fight in the bag. Somehow he gets rear naked choke. Volatile. And then the next fight against Charles Oliveira, he goes 5 rounds, 25 minutes. Crazy. Like, it's very, very hard to cap a Chandler fight. What that tells me is I'm staying away from this one, Dan. You know, I ain't really confident in this fight. How could you be when you look at his entire career? I'm going to say Paddy does get it done. I can't really picture in my mind how he does it. And oftentimes when I can't do that, I shouldn't bet on the fight, because I have caught myself doing that in the past. Like, for example, I called Lucindo to beat Lemos, right? But I didn't know how she was going to do it. I was like, oh, she's younger. She'll probably just win, maybe body locks. I don't know. Like, this is the new era. But I couldn't really picture it in my mind because I like, she ain't going to outstrike her. I don't know if she's going to grapple her, maybe. Like, I didn't really know. And then we saw what happened, right? So this might be one of those ones where, like, I'm thinking Paddy's going to win because of his youth, durability, but I can't really picture a way in which he does it. I think all ways are possible. I think he can get the back. It's very hard for me to say he's going to submit Chandler based on Chandler's career of doing well in those positions. He got submitted when he was completely gassed, dead, almost knocked out a few times against Poirier, but he does well defending the grappling. And he is very, very athletic and strong. So the striking, I think, is honestly more likely. I think he gets maybe a club and sub or something like that. Overall, it's a pass. I'm going to pick Paddy, though.
Featured bout in the featherweight division. We got Bryce Mitchell. He's 17-2, taking on Xiaonan Silva, who's 15-2. Currently, they got it. Xiaonan Silva, minus 240. The comeback on Bryce Mitchell is plus 205. I only got one thing to say regarding this fight. Hoof, 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 hoof. James Blissett, what do you think?
You barking up the wrong tree, brother. Yeah,
I just need my globe. I need my globe and walk up to you with that.
Yeah, bro, this is a good fight, man. It's always good when they have like real beef, you know. I don't think the beef.
Wait, hold on. Sorry to cut you off. Not always good. Mokaev, Cape, Rampage versus Rashad. Not always good.
No, I don't. Yeah, true. I don't mean about the actual fight, like pre-fight. You know, I'm always a little bit more excited. But man, it could turn out to be a snooze fest. I don't think it is, man. I've never seen a Gene Silva snooze fest, so I'm gonna say, you know, that it is a banger of a fight, and I think it goes the way in which most Gene Silva fights go. Now, I understand why people are on Bryce here. I understand why the market has moved to Bryce here. I was kind of debating earlier in the week at some point. He was a much bigger number than he is now. Gene's never fought a grappler of this caliber. I'm pretty certain that Bryce is a much better jiu-jitsu submission grappler than Gene Silva. He's got skills that he can win this fight. If you go back and look at his Topuria fight, gave Topuria one of his hardest fights in his career. Yes, I guess Jai Herbert kicked him in the head. Outside of that, he didn't. Jai Herbert gave him a hard fight, to be honest. Round one, like, he was catching him throughout the entire round. So outside of that fight, I'd say Bryce probably gave him his toughest test. Zalal won, he kind of dominated him. So that's saying something. Topuria is a good fighter, very good fighter. He came into that fight ready, not like the Zalal debut. And he was piecing him up on the striking at points, making him look a little bit bad on the feet. Now, I feel like, Topuria would have always won that fight. He's a big favorite. But we can't discount what Price did in that fight. And, there is some similarities to Topuria and Silva, just in terms of the angles at which they hit shots, the power in which they have on the feet, the physicality they have. So I wouldn't be surprised if Bryce wins round one here. He has a weird striking style on the feet, man. It's hard to get a beat on him. So I wouldn't be surprised, he's catching him maybe some leg kicks, maybe some jabs. He's bit, quite long rangey for the weight class to some degree. He's very quick to jump to those single legs. He will chain wrestle as well. So I think, he can have some success here. And I think that's what people are seeing. Overall, I think in a 15-minute fight, he's going to get caught. I think that Gene Silva throws strikes too well to not catch someone like Bryce, who isn't the best striker, over a consistent 15-minute period. He's a bit tricky to find out. Once you find him out, I think you can catch him. And that's what I think is going to happen. I think Bryce will maybe get caught with an uppercut, lunging in, maybe get caught with a flying knee, lunging in. The main reason I'm not betting Bryce and why I'm leaning to Gene Silva is not the Emmett fight. That he can do that to anyone. It's the Dan Ige fight. Dan Ige put up a very good fight in that one. And I feel like there's enough similarities in Gene Silva and Dan Ige, and actually more on the Gene Silva side with the athleticism and the strong base, that I feel like the fight could go the same way. And Gene's a level above, in my opinion, even though he hasn't proven it. And I think he's going to catch him at some point. So I like Gene Silva to win this fight inside the distance.
Gombas?
Yeah, on the look ahead here, I took like plus 320 on Bryce. Like, I'm not super interested in this level. I just feel like anytime you get like a striker versus a chain grappler at that price, it's kind of like an easy click for me, at least. Obviously, two very different styles here. I feel like Gene Silva has some really just like insane intangibles in terms of like physicality, hardware, durability, strength. Like, he seems like a freak in that sense to me. Bryce, obviously, he's a grinder. He's a good grappler. He chains it together on the mat. Obviously, his losses in the UFC or to Topuria, which, we've covered him enough already, and Josh Emmett just kind of killed him. I don't give no credence to Emmett. Like, I'm trying to think of the best way to say this. Like, I don't think that was like a random outcome is what I'm trying to say. Like, Bryce was having – I bet on Bryce that fight. Like, I had a really good price. It was pretty, like, telling to me how he wasn't able to set up a shot at all. Like, he was kind of – if you remember, he was kind of like circling, and then he just kind of tried to go in and got killed. So to me, it's a little bit worrisome going into this fight that he didn't really seem to have any way of setting up the takedown. Obviously, a guy like Silva can make you pay with one punch. And I kind of alluded to this on Twitter, but I don't really understand how, like, Silva could be minus 250 here and the under is like minus 135, under minus 135. Like, I'm having a hard time picturing like a Silva decision. Like, I just can't really see it. Is he going to stuff takedowns and like hang out on the outside? Like, he doesn't really fight that way. And I have a hard time imagining Bryce just kind of like sitting at range, like getting beat. So just straight up, I favor Silva from a betting standpoint. I think it's dog or pass. I'm happy with the plus 300, but other than that, like at this price, to me, probably closer to right.
Look, man, even though Josh Emmett hit Bryce Mitchell so hard that he had him denying historical events and facts from World War II, you can't deny that Bryce Mitchell can grapple his ass off. And, James referenced the Dan Ige fight, and I'm glad you did, because I watched that, I think, last night. Man, I was impressed with the dominance from Bryce Mitchell, for getting your eye closed and to be able to just hold someone like that down, get to dominant positions. Like it was an impressive performance as far as I'm concerned. Now, the thing with Gene that is worrisome, especially when you have to lay a price like this, is he doesn't have the same kind of big fight experience that Bryce does. Now, granted, Bryce has lost all those big fights. However, he's still been in those situations. And another thing I like that you brought up, James, was that Bryce is deceptively long for the weight class. Like I was like, every time I watch him, I'm like, damn, this dude's a little taller than I remember. And he's got that little sidekick game, which you don't expect. So he does have some good qualities about him. That being said, I'm curious what his chin looks like after that Emmett fight, because I don't care what anyone says, but he has not been in a fight since the Emmett fight. What, you think the Kron Gracie fight was a fight? How can you call that a fight if the other guy refuses to throw a punch, you know? So Bryce Mitchell hasn't been hit in the face properly since the Emmett fight, which is good. He's taken plenty of time, you know, to let his brain heal. But I'm curious what happens when Xiaonan lands. Now, as far as Gene, man, he's got a lot of talent and a lot of potential, but that doesn't mean that he's impervious to roadblocks along the way, right? Like a lot of our great fighters had to take their first setback. Now, while I don't think that this will be his first setback, Gombas, you asked, how could this fight potentially go to decision? And while I agree with you that, you know, most likely someone's hitting the deck, I think that the way it could go to decision is, you know, you have a round where Bryce actually takes him down and holds him down. And you have, you know, maybe Silva gets up, lands some damage, but then he's pinned back up against the fence. And it's one of those things where it comes down to the control of Bryce versus the big moments of Silva. That's assuming Silva hasn't put him away. And then the thing I kind of criticize about Silva, but I don't know if that's going to be a factor here, is that he fucks around a lot, right? He's playing a lot of games in there. Now that's part of his style too, because like 2 seconds after he started like high-fiving Melsick a bunch of times, he knocked him the you-know-what out, right? So like, I don't know if that's a strategy to get to lower the guard of your opponents and get them to think that, hey, we're buddy-buddy now, and now I'm going to sleep you, or what the deal is. But like, yeah, sometimes he plays around too much for my liking. But here against Bryce, I hope, who knows? I think he should be all business here. Now, regarding how is Gene Silva's takedown defense and how is his get-up game, I think that's two very important questions to ask when you're fighting someone like Bryce Mitchell. So I know a lot of people are bringing up that Charles Jourdain fight, right, where he got taken out 3 times. But I think the context missing there is that when you're getting ready to fight Charles Jourdain, you're not thinking about Charles Jourdain taking you down. You're thinking about Air Jourdain. You're thinking about the kicks. You're thinking about a striking battle, right? So I think that props to Charles for throwing in, you know, a little wild card there. But the thing people aren't mentioning, besides that, they didn't mention that either. They're also not mentioning that Gene got right back up right away. Each time has the instincts to get back up. Now, granted, Bryce is a way different grappler than Charles Jourdain, but I'm just saying he's going to be expecting the grappling here. Now, the other instances I saw, you know, in that Dober fight where he, you know, he jumped a guillotine. I noticed this guy likes his guillotine, but what I liked about that is when he noticed that it wasn't going to be finished, he stood right back up, right? It wasn't like he gave up the position. Now he's on his back. And now he's going to stay here for the remainder of the round. That would really piss me off. But he gets right back up right away. He knows how to wall walk. He knows how to swim for underhooks. I just need him to be fully locked in, not playing games. And I think if he does that, I think he hands Bryce Mitchell another knockout loss and hopefully gives him a history lesson. So I'm going to go Gene Silva here for the dub. Now, next up in the featherweight division, we got a hell of a matchup. We got Yair Rodriguez. He's 19-5, welcoming the Bellator legend, the Bellator GOAT, Patricio Pitbull, or as we like to say in Brazil, Pitbull. He's 36-7, and currently they got it. Yair Rodriguez minus 195. The comeback on Patricio Pitbull is plus 170. Guys, I got to be honest. This is the fight I'm struggling the most with, probably on the whole card, because in Patricio's prime, this is a no-brainer. This is an insta-click at this number, and it might still be. Y'all talk to me in a second, but in his prime, I'm not even thinking twice. I'm not even having a conversation. I'm hitting it. But that being said, guys, my boy Patricio, I think he's 38, coming into the UFC, and the thing about that, obviously the age is a factor, but I don't like that he's like jumping between weight classes, man. I remember GSP famously talking about how, you know, when guys drop a weight class, then go back up, then go back down, they oftentimes don't look the same ever again. And we're dealing with a guy in Patricio, respect to him, true pound for pound fighter, fought at featherweight and won the belt in Bellator, fought at lightweight and won the belt in Bellator. Guess who he beat at lightweight? He knocked out Michael Chandler in the first round, guys. And but then he tried going to bantamweight, and it's like, bro, like, I know you're a smaller guy, but yeah, that weight cut clearly was not a good move. Now he's back up at featherweight. You know, he went to Japan at 55s, got knocked out by a random who's lost his next couple fights. I didn't like that, but to give Patricio credit for that, he did take that fight on like a week notice, up a weight class, was clearly out of shape, but still the damage sustained, I'm worried about. And then with Yair, obviously his kicking game is so dynamic. He can do things that other guys can't do regarding kicking, like 360 kicks. And like the only guy that could do the kind of kicks that he does is like Anthony Showtime Pettis, you know, jumping off the cage, all that kind of stuff. But the issue with that, right, is if you're not landing like highlight reel knockouts like Yair did against, say, Andre Feely, right, when he did that flying kick, is you're going to put yourself on your back like he did against Max Holloway. You put yourself on your back and a guy like Patricio Pitbull is on top of you. It's not going to be the best look, especially for Yair, for whatever reason. After his initial burst of incredible kicks, which could get anyone out of there, I don't know what happens to him in these fights. Like, so back to, we were talking about the main event, how, oh yeah, but it was only Islam Makhachev and Topuria, so no big deal that he got knocked the fuck out, right? So now with Yair, people are like, oh, but it was only Volkanovski and Ortega. You know, Ortega's got an incredible ground game. Volkanovski's Volk, no big deal. I don't know. Those two fights were a huge deal to me because they were two back-to-back quit jobs. And I just expected more from Yair in those spots. And I understand. I heard he moved to Chicago. He changed his scenario. You know, he's got different surroundings now. He's all in, this and that. I've heard it all before, but like, okay, he's all in. But what does that mean if Patricio's on top of him? You know, is Yair going to break like he has in the past? Like, I'm curious about that. And then here's another thing that's kind of making me hesitant, gentlemen. So back when Henry Cejudo was in his prime, y'all remember like 2020 Cejudo, you know, against Dominick Cruz, and back when he was explosive, and back when like Henry Cejudo was looking like a ridiculous athlete out there. So Patricio Pitbull and Davison Figueiredo were part of that camp. They were all champs at the same time, right? Patricio's a Bellator champ, Henry's a bantamweight champ, and I think Davison's is flyweight champ, right? And they were doing the Neuroforce 1 workouts, which Neuroforce 1 is the strength and conditioning program attached to Fight Ready, but you got to kind of pay a little premium. Not all the fighters at Fight Ready can afford the Neuroforce 1 strength and conditioning program, but of course Henry Cejudo, Patricio Pitbull, and Davison could. They're all fucking champs. So in that era, they were so explosive, so dynamic. They kind of had a bit of a karate stance to them, and man, their blitzes were something stupid. And back then, this will be a max bet at plus 170. So I know this is long-winded, and I haven't even given my pick yet. I'll give my pick at the end. But like Gombas, like, how are you looking at this? Are you looking at this as dog or pass? What form do you think Patricio is in? And are you with me that Yair's last two performances were massive letdowns?
Yeah, absolutely. Like you hit on a lot of great points there. Going into tape here, you know, I was pretty sure I wanted to bet. I was pretty sure I was going to bet Pitbull. I was like, oh, you know, Yair's defensive grappling and wrestling is so tragically bad. Like, I actually still don't think people realize how bad it is. Like, in the right spot, I think we're gonna get still somehow get a really good number on fading him. But I looked back at so many Pitbull fights, and he just does not offensively grapple. In my head, I remember the Borix fight. It was like, oh, you know, he got on top of Borix a few times. That was all off of Borix throwing like crazy knees and like trying to like catching kicks. Like, he wasn't actually actively pursuing takedowns. So I don't think you could really rely on him to do that here on the feet. You know, Pitbull at this point in his career, like, he'll compete. I think Yair's a level. I'm pretty confident in saying Yair's like a level ahead in the striking. I feel like Pitbull's probably going to look for the big shot. I think Yair will get off more volume, especially to the legs and body. So I favor Yair here. I think the line's probably pretty close to accurate. I think it probably goes 3, and he's out ahead on volume, especially on leg kicks and body kicks.
James, you know what's my biggest worry here, man? That this is a situation like that second Jeremy Stevens fight, right? I come out here. I bet Patricio Pitbull, Yair lights him up with kicks those first 2 rounds, gasses because that kicking style is, it's a very taxing style. You got to be super dynamic and, to land kicks like that. And, 3rd round, Patricio beats the shit out of him, but loses at 29-28. And I'm fucking pissed. If this was 5 rounds, I'd take Patricio. So I'm struggling here. But one quick thing before you go, James, regarding Andrew's comment that, Patricio doesn't wrestle much. I mean, I can't argue with it, but I will say, so interestingly enough, 2 guys on this card have participated in 2 of the best fights in Bellator history, right? Michael Chandler versus Eddie Alvarez won. That is the best fight in Bellator history. Now, in my opinion, some of y'all might disagree, the second best fight in Bellator history is Patricio Pitbull versus Emmanuel Sanchez 1. And in that fight, Patricio was hitting some nice inside trips, but to your point, Gombas, this was back when he was training with Henry Cejudo. That was literally Henry Cejudo's inside trip, which is his signature move. And we haven't seen much of that since. So, James, where do you stand on this?
Yeah, this is a good fight. I think this is a spot that you bet Pitbull in. He's a veteran of the sport. And I don't think that the UFC jitters will get to him. It's obviously a little bit of a wild card. It's not 100%. I can't guarantee that, but I think that, based on the fights he's been in, he's fought for titles, he's lost titles, he's been all over the world fighting, even recently. I think he's going to come into this fight ready. I think he's extremely motivated to show his skills in the UFC skill set. So I'm not worried about it being his UFC debut, because we have to get that out of the way, because people always lay eggs on their debut. Shout out to Louis Garuli last week. So, yeah, and I bet on that motherfucker at -2 saying so. I'm the idiot that's talking about it now, but I don't think it's going to be the case for him this week. Now, in terms of the actual fight, yeah, I think a lot of people, to Andrew's point, Pitbull doesn't wrestle a lot. A lot of people will be thinking this is a wrestler versus striker matchup. I don't think so, man. I think Patricio Pitbull can crack this guy on the feet. I think he can hurt Yair Rodriguez on the feet. He has some of the biggest power in the featherweight division in the UFC right now since that they signed him. He dropped a lot of guys, man. He dropped Chandler, hurt him badly. He dropped
Emmanuel Sanchez.
One Archuleta dropped him badly multiple times in their fight. This guy hits very, very hard. And if you remember, the Alexander Volkanovski finish came off a strike on the feet. So Pitbull has good Mexican durability, right? But he's not completely
Brazilian. Wait, sorry, Pitbull is Brazilian.
No, Yair Rodriguez.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Yair has good Mexican durability, but he's not indestructible on the feet, and as we've seen in the UFC, because, the Volk and Ortega, their finishes come off the ground, but the Volkanovski one started on the feet, all right? And he also got rocked by Max a couple of times. And so Max audited him in the grappling as well, man. I mean, that's not a good sign. Max is a striker. So I think that Pitbull has good chance to hurt him on the feet. And I also think Pitbull is so slick in transitions with the guillotine. I think he's got one of the best guillotines in the game as well. And he's been doing it for his entire career, and I think that he could catch him in some type of transition guillotine here. I also think that he doesn't wrestle a lot, but he gets on top a lot, Like, I don't know. It just seems to happen in a lot of his fights, man. That one Archuleta fight, he dropped him and got on top. He reversed certain clinch scenarios and got on top. In the Borix fight, he got on top many times. And, yeah, a lot of them was off weird strikes. Flying knee, I think he got on top once. A couple of kicks, he got on top. And he also... They just come clinched in the middle of the octagon, and he was able to take him down. So Yair froze those type of strikes. Yair's going to do some weird kicking shit, spinning stuff. He's going to probably give his back. Like, he does it in every fight ever. I don't see why he would just not do it here. And if he doesn't do it here, it's going to give Pitbull a chance to rock him on the feet and be some weird low-paced fight. So I do think the leg kicks are going to be there for Yair. I think obviously he can knock him out. Pitbull is not in his prime anymore. That's the biggest worry for me, is that Pitbull's a little bit past it, kind of like the Alexander Volkanovski worry. But at the end of the day, this is plus 180, plus 170 now, I believe. And yeah, I just think it's a spot that you bet Pitbull. He could get knocked out, but I like him to break down Yair as the fight goes on.
Yeah, now regarding UFC debuts, people need to definitely put context on this. This is not like some unproven guy making a UFC debut. In fact, the fighters from this generation that made their UFC debuts, I got it written down. So I got 4 of them, and they went 2-2 so far, right? So Gilbert Melendez and Eddie Alvarez, they dropped their UFC debuts to Benson Henderson and Cowboy Cerrone, respectively. But MVP and Chandler won their UFC debuts against Kevin Holland and Dan Hooker, respectively. So we'll see where Patricio Pitbull lies in the mix. I'm still, like I said, on Monday, I got Yair. On Tuesday, I got Pitbull. Today, I don't know. I'll go with Pitbull because I think there's a dog or pass situation. But yeah, I wouldn't be surprised by any outcome in this fight. Now, next up in the light heavyweight division, we got a hell of a match, and we got the return of Nikita Krylov. He's 30-9, taking on Dominick, the Dominator Reyes. Oh, excuse me, the Devastator. The Dominator is Dominick Cruz. The Devastator, who's 14-4. Currently, they got it. Nikita Krylov, -175. The comeback on Dom Reyes is +150. So if y'all had a guess, so this dude, Nikita Krylov, right? He's got, what, 30 wins? All right, out of those 30 wins, how many do y'all think, off the top of your head, how many of those 30 wins do y'all think are finishes, Gombas, off the top of your head?
I think it's like 28 or something. It's a lot.
James, what do you think?
27.
Okay, so Gombas got it right. It's 28. Y'all were both very close, but that's the point I'm making here. This guy, 12-1 to the knockout, 16-6 to the sub, but it's been a while. He used to get subbed a lot back in the day, but it's been a minute. But yeah, this guy is a killer through and through. I kind of wish they saved him for June in Atlanta, because this guy has a history in Atlanta. I saw him knock out Ed Herman with a devastating head kick right in front of my eyes. I saw him choke out Ovince St. Preux in that rematch, so I would have liked to see him. But he's got a good history down south, and Reyes is on a bit of a, at least he's got his confidence back. Let's leave it at that. So, Gombas, what do you think? This should be an explosive light heavyweight matchup.
This is a really weird one for me, and I think you said last fight was the hardest one for you to call on the card, and I'm about there with this one, because on one hand it's like, okay, we all know the stigma surrounding Dominick Reyes at this point, like post John Jones fight, where a lot of people thought he could have won. He goes on some big losing streak, but not just a losing streak, knocked out, and then quietly he comes back this past year, wins a couple, gets back in the win column, gets a couple finishes of his own. And then on the Krylov side, you mentioned he's a finisher. He's always in exciting fights. He had put together a little bit of a win streak, and then he just disappeared for a couple of years. Like, we haven't seen him in the cage in over 2 years. And I think his most recent wins actually against Spann, who beat Reyes. Stylistically, I feel like Reyes is pretty hard to take down, just given his athleticism. And on the feet, I feel like they're both pretty flawed. I feel like a finish is likely in this fight. I think, let me say this. I think Krylov has more ways to win. So I guess I'll side with him, but for me, it's one of the trickiest on the card to break down.
James?
Yeah, this is a great fight. I also subscribe to, that this is potentially one of the hardest fights to break down on the card. I guess, just where do you think Dominick Reyes is? Because it's hard for me to judge his downtrend, Like, I don't think that he just completely lost it, because let's look at his losses, right? John Jones in a fight that many thought he won. It was 5 years ago, right? But let's talk about his loss streak. Jan Blachowicz came back off the title fight. Jan became champion, so it is what it is. That wasn't the best look, but man, he got beat down in that fight. Jan's a very good striker. We moved to the Jiri Prochazka fight. That was a war, Jiri's going to do that to a lot of people. He did it to Jamal Hill. He did it to many, many other fighters. I don't think we can take too much stock into that. It was a close fight. I mean, up until that point, it was a spinning elbow. Shit can land on anyone. The Ryan Spann one is the one where I was like, oh shit, maybe his chin is done. Because with the Jan fight and the Jiri fight, he took a lot of damage in those fights. I wasn't thinking this guy's got no chin at all, right? But the Ryan Spann, I was like, oh my God, is his chin actually gone? Because it was like a jab. And obviously, yeah, Ryan Spann can hit, can hurt you, but it was a jab. It was a jab. That's not good. It's just not good. But then he comes back and he beats Dustin Jacoby in the first round, and then he beats Anthony Smith. And it's like, okay, like, I don't think this whole massive Dominick Reyes downtrend, I think it has to be contextualized a little bit. And I'm not 100% on where he is at in his career at this point in time. Because I'll tell you this now. If his chin isn't gone, he can definitely win this fight. Krylov's a very, very good fighter. Krylov's a finisher. But Dominick Reyes is a finisher as well. I mean, he hasn't been to decision many times. I believe maybe twice in his UFC career. And one of those times he knocked out Ovin St. Preux, but they called it a decision. So I know you remember that one, right? So really, it's just one decision and, you know, one decision win. So he's a finisher as well. So I kind of felt like the under is a decent way to go in this fight. I feel like someone's probably getting finished, man, unless it turns into this crazy war in which the under is going to look like value anyway. So I like to stick to the under if I'm looking at any bet in this fight. Ultimately, I don't know who to pick. You know, like Andrew said, it's very tough for me. I'll pick Krylov. He's got a little bit better wins. In my opinion, a little bit better performances, even in losses against people like Magomed Ankalaev and some of the other losses he still looked good in. But Dominick can catch him. You know, he's a crazy fighter, Krylov. He's a little bit all over the place on the feet. I think as the fight goes on, he'll probably start to get his game going more than Dominick Reyes. I don't think Dominick Reyes is like a builder in fights. You know, I feel like he has his best work done early, and if he can establish dominance. Whereas I think Krylov, yes, he does usually finish early, but I think the type of fighter that he is, where the grappling, the cardio, the grit, the pace, the tenacity, I feel like that will take over the fight as it goes along. So I'll pick him because of that reason. I favor him in a decision and 50-50 on the inside the distance. But overall, it's a very, very close fight. I don't hate on anyone taking a dog shot.
Yeah, look, I'm happy for Dom Reyes, you know, to see him pick himself back up, get on that win streak. You know, you got to feel good about moments like that. Now, regarding, but it was only John Jones, it was only Jan Blachowicz, it was only Yair. I mean, those knockouts were fucking devastating, bro. And yeah, it was only world champions, but those world champions, what was the psychological, you know, aftermath and the chin aftermath of that? The chin aftermath was that Ryan Spann knocked him out with a jab in like 2 minutes. But that being said, here's the thing. Like you said, Krylov's going to leave openings. Why? Because Krylov is an absolute madman. And that's just the bottom line. We talked about at the beginning. The guy has got 28 finishes on his record. He is the definition of a killer be killed fighter. And I think a lot of y'all don't even know this. If you had to take a quick guess, how old do you think Krylov is? Gombas, just guess.
33.
James?
31.
Right in between the two of y'all, 32. So like this guy, for as many fights as he had, you know, this is 40th pro fight that we know of. He's one of these guys that, you know, he's got a bunch of fights that aren't even on his record. And plus all the street fights in Ukraine. Yeah. Okay. So this guy's got a ton of fights for only being 32, I believe I said it was. And here's the thing about it on the feet. So he comes from this karate background. I believe it's Kyokushin, but no one trashed me in the comments if it's a different style of karate. But he does these combinations. So, okay, before I talk about the combinations, let's talk about this. Oftentimes with karate guys, you think that they sit back, they wait to counter, they're low volume, they do all these things, they run away. This dude is the exact opposite. He does running, but it's running right at you. And as far as the combinations, what makes them cool is that he does a lot of same side shots, right? He'll throw a jab to a same side head kick, and then he'll throw a right hand to a right side kick. So it's really cool seeing the flow of his combinations. But man, I don't know what it's been about him the like first minute of his last few fights, but he just goes after these guys in the most chaotic fashion ever. And of course, like y'all said, that could leave openings. But I've seen a chaotic, just unorthodox guy put Reyes to sleep before, and that was Yair Prochazka. Yeah, I get it. Yair's touched gold and Krylov hasn't, but out of the guys that Reyes has been losing to, I'd say Prochazka is the closest to Krylov in terms of just being a wild man, being unorthodox, willing to try things that other guys don't try. And a little bit more of a ground game too. He can mix in takedowns too. I think Dom will be hard to take down. I mean, if you can get right back up from Chris Weidman, I think you should be fine. But you know, who knows? But that being said, I'm going Krylov here, man. If it wasn't for the 2-year layoff, I'd bet him here because I think he had a lot of momentum before he went away. I don't know what he's been up to. You know, the Amosov guy, y'all remember Yaroslav Amosov, and he's like what 30-1 or 29-1 or something crazy. He had to take a little break because he went to go fight in the war, right? I don't know if that's what's been going on with Krylov. Has he been fighting in the war and that's why he's been gone? Did he have a kid? Does he have an injury? Like, someone let us know why Krylov's been gone. But the bottom line is, I think he's better than Dom Reyes, and I think he's going to head kick, knock him out on Saturday night, and be in the conversation for a potential title shot. I don't know if people know this, but he fought Ankalaev. He won the first round. It was a very competitive fight. Krylov is a contender, just hopefully no ring rust here and hopefully no stunts. But I think if those aren't the case, I think he comes out here and he wins this fight in devastating fashion against the Devastator. Now,
don't you guys think that the doesn't go to decision at -200 and the under 1.5 at plus money is kind of wide? Like, I feel like that should be -400, -350 to not go to decision.
What do you think, Gombas?
Yeah, I guess the most likely outcome of it going the distance, just, you know, off the top of my head, would be if Krylov gets like a lot of top time and doesn't submit him. But I do agree that just the nature of their, like the way they both fight really is pretty finish oriented. So I agree with you. It would be that or pass.
Well, gentlemen, before we move on, I got to give a quick shout out to today's sponsor, Bet105.ag. What book does -105 odds on major sports, no KYC, and boosted odds in MMA? That's right, Bet105. My friends, this weekend for UFC Miami, UFC 314, my friends at Bet105.ag got a special offer for you. If you're going to parlay the two biggest favorites on the card, Julian Erosa and Chase Hooper, their odds will be boosted by 20%. That's correct, 20%. So if you just parlay the two of them, it's already under -200, but you add the two of them to a bigger parlay, and you might be looking at a nice return there. So definitely something to consider. Also, as you guys already know, split decision insurance. Last week, that Torres-Finney fight was ridiculous, right? They gave a 30-27 to that dude, Valentine. Y'all that bet Torres-Finney, listen, you got your money back, thank God. But what would have happened if they gave it to Robert Valentine in that spot? Well, with Bet105 split decision insurance, at least you would have got 25% of your money back. So with every other book, you lose in that spot. Here, if you lose a split decision, at least you get 25% back. Hey, that's better than nothing, especially with the state of judging in modern day MMA. So guys, make sure you use my promo code HALFTHEBATTLE, deposit $100 and get $50 in free bets at Bet105. Now, next up in the featherweight division, we got a matchup between Sean Woodson. He's 13-1-1, taking on Dan Ige, who's 18-9. Currently, they got it Sean Woodson -170. The comeback on Dan Ige is +145. I'm looking forward to this matchup a lot, man. So I'm curious about y'all's opinions, but hear me out where I'm thinking first. So I like Sean Woodson here. Let me explain why. But my hesitancy is that like a week or two ago, granted, much lower limits, he was a dog. Then he was a -120. Now he's a -170. So I like to get the best of it, but at the same time, you couldn't get down much on those dog odds back, So, but that being said, let's break down the stylistics here. 6'3" versus 5'7", 79-inch reach versus what? Is it 71-inch reach? Are we dealing with an 8-inch reach advantage here? Yeah, 71 versus 79, I think. Or it might even be 80, because some of these guys with those long-ass reaches, they purposely don't extend their arms all the way on the test so that they don't let their opponents know how long their reach is. I know Phil Rowe did that, but this guy's officially listed at 78-inch reach. Okay, so let's talk about some things. People love to bring up this Saldana fight with Sean Woodson, which first of all was like 3 years ago. And I agree with people that, yeah, he got knocked out by Saldana. But I got a couple things to say regarding that. Everyone's like, well, if Saldana did it, then of course Ige is going to do it, without a shadow of a doubt. If I had to ask you guys, who's got more finishes in MMA, Dan Ige or Luis Saldana? I'm sure you'll both guess this correctly because of the way I worded it. I'm sure you guys are like, oh, so Saldana's got more finishes. Okay, let's take it a step further. Who's got more knockouts, to be specific, Saldana or Dan Ige? You guessed correctly, Saldana. Saldana is a very dangerous guy. I don't understand why people are acting like this guy got dropped by some soft-ass hitter or something. Not to mention, the biggest criticism for Saldana, if you watched his UFC career, what was the criticism? That he goes balls to the wall for the first 7.5 minutes, and then he gasses out badly. It was never, oh, Saldana's a soft hitter, or Saldana, is this or no. It was just he's a gasser after a big first 7 minutes, and he had a big first couple of minutes against Sean Woodson. It was what it was. But let me say this: if you can get knocked the out in round one, and you can turn that into a draw, Hey, dog, like you got insane heart. Like just the fact that he was able to turn a first round knockout loss into a draw. Yeah, I get it. Saldana did some dumbass shit, but still, this guy didn't pull an Aljo. He could have got a DQ in there. He did not. He did not pull any acting job whatsoever. He gets back in there and he wins the next 2 rounds. Like, hey, Sean Woodson has serious heart. Now, as far as the stylistics of this matchup, why do I like Woodson here? Because this guy stays true to his style. He knows exactly what his style is. You're not going to see Sean Woodson come out here and shoot takedowns from 10 miles out or try some stupid bullshit that's uncharacteristic to who he is. This guy stays true to who he is. And who is he? A boxer for MMA. This guy is very long. He utilizes that jab. I'm loving the feints lately. And the way I see this going down, I mean, all these guys have had a lot of success jabbing up Dan Ige. And I'm talking about much shorter guys. I'm talking about wrestlers. I'm talking about Movsar Evloev, who's a great fighter, but Movsar ain't known for his striking. Movsar put on a striking clinic against Dan Ige, man. And he's not the only one to do it. I mean, let's be honest. Dan Ige is 4-7 in his last 11 fights. And I think that this is, just stylistically speaking, how they match up, I think this is the perfect fight for Sean Woodson to get into the top 15. You know, against the guy who, listen, man, I think it's going to be eating jabs. I think his eyes going to start to close up. And people saying that, oh, Sean Woodson needs to fight the perfect fight. Does he? I think he needs to maybe fight the perfect first round while Ige is fresh. But then after that, once Ige starts gassing out, then his volume starts to wane. His eyes going to start to get shut from that jab. And then from there, it's cruise control for Sean Woodson. So I think the first round is going to be the most dangerous, of course, because like Ige, he's got different approaches in different fights, right? The Bryce Mitchell fight, he was a lot more hesitant, but that last fight against Lerone, he went right after Lerone the second the bell rang. And he even dropped Lerone, which was impressive. But after that, he had nothing left. And Lerone started feeling comfortable to the point where Lerone's out here throwing spinning kicks against Dan Ige. That's how much he was feeling himself out there. I'm thinking it's going to be a high output striking based decision, lots of jabs. And I think the head strike differential is going to be like 2 or 3 to 1, you know, assuming that Ige didn't put him down, because you have to respect Ige's power. But Ige, in my mind, is 100% KO or bust in this spot. If Ige tries to wrestle, man, I hope Ige tries to wrestle, because in my opinion, he's going to gas himself out trying to wrestle this 6 dude. So I got Sean Woodson here. What do you think, James? You're muted, I think. Oh, yeah, I muted you. My bad, bro.
That was me, bro. I think it was me.
Go ahead.
I got my coffee delivery, bro. You know, I need another one.
Hey, real quick,
I'm locked in.
Shout out to my boy James, who right now it's Wednesday for us. It's Thursday morning for him, and he woke up to do this. Thank you.
Of course, man. I'm in the future, bro. And something I saw in the future is Ige knocks this motherfucker out, man. Ige catches him with that left hook. Ige catches him. So, yeah, like this is obviously a good match. Stylistically, I think Sean Woodson can win the fight, but I feel like Dan Ige is still in his prime. You know, I honestly do. That's debatable. You know, we can go back and forth about that, but I kind of feel like he's still at his prime. I mean, the Lerone Murphy fight, he looked pretty good in that one, right? Against potential title challenger at some point. Diego Lopes fight, it was on a day notice, 20 minutes, half an hour notice. You know, he jumped in the cab and went to the octagon, and he fought okay in that one. I mean, it was a good performance in my opinion. Andre Fili fight, he knocked him out. The Bryce Mitchell fight, I think about 30% of the media scorecards had him winning 29-28. It was a good performance. You know, he didn't get finished.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. I don't want to speak out of turn, but you can check it. I believe.
I'm gonna check.
Yeah, definitely. He got some. I think he got some 29-28s in there, and I thought it was a close fight. You know, when I rewatched it. So, and then before that, he's on a bit of a win streak. So
you're right, dude. 5 people scored it for Dan 29-28. Damn.
Yeah. So, you know, I think that he's still shown time and time again, even in his recent career, that he's performing at a high level. Stylistically, it's going to be tough to get past that Woodson jab, but I think if he does it, there's only one man with the power to put the other guy out. I think Sean Woodson has. I mean, is Sean Woodson going to finish Dan Ige? I think it's very, very unlikely to me, man. I think Dan Ige has a big chance to hurt Sean Woodson or knock him out. And then I also think that, you know, if anyone gets taken down, it's going to be Sean Woodson. So like there's multiple advantages. One of the big things here as well, and I like to do this a lot in MMA, and it is wiki capping. But, you know, we always take the piss out of wiki capping, which is right. But at the same time, wiki capping can tell you some things that are actually important. And I'll tell you one. That is the level of competition, right? So we look at Dan Ige, and if Dan Ige loses this fight, it would be the worst loss, like the most low-level loss of his entire UFC career. And the guy's had like 10, 15 fights, right? He's never lost to someone on the level of Sean Woodson. If Sean Woodson wins this fight, it'd be the best win of his entire career, right? He's never beat someone on a level of Dan Ige. And I do think that that means something, because we've seen Dan Ige beat this level many, many times. Even recently, you know, I'd put Sean on a similar level to Andre Fili.
But Andre Fili wins ones, lose one, win one, lose one. This motherfucker's 8-1 in the UFC.
Yeah. But Bryce Mitchell, you know, a few people scored it for him. I thought he had a close fight against Lerone Murphy, Diego Lopes. Like, I feel like level of competition, you know, I think it means a lot, man. And stylistically, it's tough. But I think all the intangibles with the durability, with the physicality, with the person who can grit out, you know, like keep their game going over the 15 minutes. Sean does put up good 15-minute numbers, but I think if the going gets tough, man, I just want Ige. And he's a dog, bro. He's plus 150. So I like Ige in this one. Maybe Sean has to fight clean for 15 minutes, man. He cannot let Ige get close. Like if he wins this fight, he's going to have to almost put on a masterclass. And I don't know if he can put a masterclass against someone like Ige, because, you know, in fights that he has won, like the Charles Jourdain fight, I bet him in that fight, right? But it was a close fight. Like it wasn't some domination from him. And other fights, you know, I bet Yusuf Zalal against him. That was an extremely close fight, split decision. Like Sean is not really like dominating these masterclass type performances, to be honest, really at all. And against like bums, like Bazooka, right? So I feel like he has to put on a masterclass against Ige, because I think if he makes it close at all, those close moments are going to be him getting cracked on the chin and hurt bad, and that could change the entire fight. So, yeah, it's not like a super strong take on the winner. I do want to say that because I spoke passionately about it. It is kind of a super strong take about the line, though. It really is. I don't like minus 170. I think this fight should be... I think Ige should be a favorite, man. I think minus 125 Ige. I think 55% is respectable. But I could be completely wrong because the market completely disagrees. So we'll see, man.
Before you go, Andrew, I mean, I think that, you know, when you knock out Terrence McKinney, you beat Yusuf Zalal, you beat Charles Jourdain, you beat Alex Caceres, and then you knock out that last kid. Hey, you earned the opportunity to fight Dan Ige. It's not like this guy beat Dennis Bazookia and Kyle Bochniak. Okay, here's Dan Ige. No, you fought some studs that were unranked. Now you get your ranked opportunity. So I think he's ready. What do you think, Gombas?
Yeah, it's a tricky one for me. Like, I quite frankly thought that Caceres beat Woodson. Like, I was surprised when I heard it was unanimous. Like, I thought they were going to give it to Caceres. And, yeah, I mean, I had Woodson against Padilla. He does a lot of things right. You know, over 15 minutes, you can't really argue with his striking metrics. He's super long. It's tricky to deal with at that division. His cardio is good. His volume's good. Ige, on the flip side, you know, he packs a punch. He's a good striker. He's fought a who's who, and really, and like, no one could say he's been uncompetitive. Like you mentioned, a couple people gave him the Mitchell fight. Like a couple people also gave him the Lerone Murphy fight. And like his last two losses are to Diego Lopes and Lerone Murphy. And Lopez is a pick'em to win the championship this weekend. And Murphy's one of the next, you know, a lot of people are saying he's one of the next in line for a title shot. So I guess in my head, I'm like, all right, you know, if you put Woodson up against Diego Lopes, Lerone Murphy, Bryce Mitchell, like I don't really think he bodes too well. That being said, there are some concerns on the Ige side as well. Like I don't know if he can do that for 15 minutes. Like in the Murphy fight, I felt like he came out really, really strong, and by the third round, it had kind of unraveled a little bit for him. Woodson, I trust to still be doing what he's doing at that point. To me, it's a close fight. It's dog or pass. I get why Woodson's the favorite. Like, if I didn't watch any tape and just strictly went off of statistics, like Woodson's stats are really, really good. His length's really impressive. His cardio is good. His output's good. I do think it ends up being a close fight, though. Gun to my head, I'll take Ige.
Now, next up in the strawweight division, we got a matchup between Virna Jandiroba. She's 21-3, taking on Xiaonan, who's 19-4. Currently, they got it. Virna Jandiroba -140. The comeback on Xiaonan is +120. So I bet on Xiaonan in every single one of her UFC fights except her last fight. Reason being was that my whole thing was that this girl was going to be a future world champion. I bet her from her debut, max bet against Kylan Curran all the way to the title fight. And you know, my whole thing was like, okay, she got to the pinnacle of the sport. Now what? Like, you know, some people, you know, it's every fighter's dream to be a world champion. And when you get to the top of the mountain, there's nowhere to go but down. So I was worried about, you know, fighters don't often come back the same when, you know, their dreams are crushed. And man, she came back like with a vengeance. I love that performance against Tabitha. That was the perfect rebound spot. But here against Virna, one thing about Virna, her jiu-jitsu is probably the best in this division's history. I'd say straight up. I mean, I remember when I bet this girl, I think it might have even been like -320 odds against Felice Herrig, and she looked -3,200. Like, took her down one time. The fight was over shortly after. You got to respect the jiu-jitsu. That being said, although Jan, you know, people still referencing the Carla fight, wasn't that like during the pandemic and shit? Like, and back when she was a white belt. Well, since the Carla fight, like, if we gotta judge improvements, like gauge, like, has she tightened up that part of her game or not? Okay, so you watch the Carla fight, which was absolutely pathetic, right? And then you skip to the Mackenzie Dern fight. Mackenzie Dern had her in like some of the worst possible situations that you can be in. I mean, you're telling me that a white belt is being full mounted or back mounted by Mackenzie Dern, like, I'm expecting them to get tapped out. And the fact that she survived all those spots and went on to win that fight, you know, earns her blue belt. That's how you earn a blue belt. You're a white belt and you survive the worst possible spots with Mackenzie Dern. Hey, that's a fucking well-deserved blue belt. So I was really happy to see that. Then the Zhang Weili fight, I know there was a little controversy in round one, but number one, she didn't tap, which was fucking badass. Shows the kind of heart she has. She also didn't tap against Angela Hill back in the day in that triangle. So this girl's got heart. And then after that round where, you know, you know, what happened with that rear naked choke. Now she's coming out here taking down Zhang Weili. Now she's coming out here dropping Zhang Weili. I was like, okay, I saw big improvements from Yan Xiaonan. Then the next fight against Tabitha, I really liked it. Clean clinical performance. But here is where it gets interesting. So I think this fight can play out a bunch of different ways. Sure, maybe first one takedown and the fight is over shortly after for Virna Jandiroba. Of course, I fully acknowledge that that's a scenario. But I also acknowledge the fact, I assume James will be right back. I also acknowledge the fact that maybe Virna takes her down and Jan survives that round. And Virna, what's Virna's biggest weakness / what's our criticism for Virna throughout the years? Her gas tank. She gasses in a lot of these fights that get extended. And if you pull up that Amanda Lemos fight that Virna had with her, right? So she took her down. She's doing her thing. But Amanda Lemos, reverse position, gets on top. It's like, okay, perfect. Now is your chance to disengage, get back on the feet, continue your game. And guess what Amanda Lemos opts to do? Amanda Lemos goes out there and decides to keep grappling with Virna. She opts to keep engaging in the grappling. I was going crazy. I was like, I mean, not going crazy because I had money on it. I didn't have money on it, but just from like a fight IQ perspective, like Lemos, you got to keep the shit standing. Hey, you survived the early adversity. You got back on top. Get up, let her up, and go do your thing. And she decides, hey, let's keep grappling. Let's show that I got something on the ground with her. I mean, if Yan does something like that, then yeah, you know, she deserves to lose. But I think that if I think Yan's going to be 100% anti-grappling here, right? Like, if she gets any chance to disengage, she will disengage. And if she can get past a tough first round where Virna expends a lot of energy, submission attempts, dominant positions, but Yan survives, I think those takedowns are going to be tougher to come by in the second and third round. I think they're going to be telegraphed. I think she's going to be breathing hard. How old is Virna? 38 now? 2 knee braces? I think Yan Xiaonan picks her apart in the second and third round and wins a decision. upset. Who's got the stronger take between you two? Go next.
I don't
James?
know, Andrew. All right, I'll go. So I don't know if she's going to be fully anti-grappling, man. I think she should have been anti-grappling against Weili Zhang because she got smashed in the first round. And I mean, she got finished in the first round. You know, I know it went to decision, but we saw what happened. But for the rest of the fight, she's engaging in the grappling, and that's a very recent fight. You know, she's actually taken down Weili Zhang. So, you know, I will give her some credit. She looks this on par, strength-wise. She looked on par with her for a lot of that fight. So I think that she's shored up her physicality, you know, a lot in recent times. But in terms of the fight IQ, I don't know if it's there, man. You know, one of the hardest things to determine in this game is fighter game plans. That's like, honestly, the hardest thing. You know, I know we've all been there, everyone on the panel, everyone on the chat, where we bet a grappler and they go out there and strike. You know, I had Barbosa to win inside the distance, a bunch of different realms, and she's just striking with her. She's beaten her, but she's striking with her last week. And I'm like, take her down. It's an insta sub. And it was. So it's very, very tough to determine fighter game plans. It's possible that, you know, I'm wrong and she just comes out here and, you know, is anti-grappling. It would be smart to be, but I feel like it would be smart to do that against Weili Zhang and against everyone she's ever fought. And she didn't really do it against Zhang, man. So, yeah, I think this fight is a very good fight. I favor Yan as the fight goes on, like you said. I have seen her push a pace in most fights. I've seen Virna tire out in most fights, but I have to pick the grappler in this spot, man. I have to pick the grappler just because I think that the level on the ground is probably wider than the level on the feet. Or another way to phrase that, because it could be similarly wide, right? Another way to phrase that is that I think that Virna will have an easier time separating with her skill set than Yan. For example, if they're on the feet, Yan, I mean, this is a strawweight fight, 115. Like, I don't think Yan's going to be landing these crazy head kicks, like dropping her all over the place. Whereas if Virna does get her down, I think it could just be a back take in the entire round or the entire fight. So I think, you know, Virna has more margin basically for error than Yan does. So yeah, I like Virna in this one. I think she gets the takedowns. I don't know necessarily if she's going to finish her. Like I said, Weili Zhang did finish her. She got 10-8'd by Mackenzie Dern in round 5, arguably. And then she did get finished back in the day against Carla. So I don't think it's out of the realm of possibility. But overall, I do think that she probably will last because she has shown a propensity to last in basically every fight outside of the Carla one. I'm calling Virna via decision. But it's a good fight, you know. But binary fight. Binary fight's always good.
Andrew?
Yeah, I'll keep the trend of Jandiroba by decision. I just feel like, although, you know, yeah, I to this day say that Xiaonan versus Carla Esparza is like one of the worst bets I've ever made, and you know, all my years of doing this. And I do think it's probably fair to say that she has made improvements since then. Like I'd actually be shocked if she hasn't. That being said, there was such a gap at that point that, like, I don't think that's a gap you could close as like an adult, if that makes sense. Like to close that grappling gap, like you would have to have been doing it since you were a child. So that being said, you know, obviously on the feet, like it's not competitive. Xiaonan's much better striker than Jandiroba. I do feel like Jandiroba has done pretty well with like limiting big exchanges on the feet. Like I feel like she kind of knows when to time her shots and when to kind of stay out of range. And if you look at who she's beat, in my opinion, it's a really solid list. Like especially, you know, her last 6 fights, let's call it: Lemos, Godinez, Marina Rodriguez, Angela Hill, Kanako Murata, and her losses to Amanda Ribas, which wasn't an uncompetitive fight. I bet Ribas there, and I was definitely worried in round 1. You know, Jandiroba took that round.
And Jandiroba, to her credit, she rocked Amanda Ribas in that fight.
Yep. And really, like, Jandiroba's only losses in her entire UFC career are the three, maybe the 3 best grapplers in the history of the division. It's Ribas, Darren, and Esparza. And I just like her process overall. Like, she just does, even in fights that should be hard. Like, the Godinez fight, on paper, in my opinion at least, was really hard for her. And I'm like, you know, I've backed her so many times, and I think this might finally be the time where she doesn't have an answer, and she was just able to figure it out and get a win. And I think she's a really, really solid process, solid fighter. I really don't think that her takedowns are the best. Like, she's not some great wrestler, but once she gets on top, she's extremely good, especially for this division. And if you look at, Xiaonan, obviously we talk about the Krylov fight. The Darren fight was a good look for her. That being said, I think Darren's takedowns are work. Like, even though she in pure jiu-jitsu, Darren's as good as it gets. I don't think her takedowns and her MMA offensive grappling is as good as Jandiroba. I still think it's fair to say there were some improvements there. I'm going on and on here, but I think Jandiroba gets it done. I just think she's proven to have such a reliable skill set in this division where she's really only going to lose fights to like that certain type of fighter. Like, I actually think there's a world where she gives Zhang, a real problem.
Now, next up in the lightweight division, we got a matchup between Chase Hooper. He's 15-3, taking on Jim Miller, who's 38-18. Currently, they got it. Hooper minus 900. The comeback on Jim Miller is plus 600. So 25 versus 41. Yeah. So I guess the question is, everyone knows how Jim Miller fights, old school badass. Most, I think, fights in UFC history, maybe most wins. He's got to have a lot of things, because this guy just keeps fighting. He's got that old man strength. He's like tapping into 9 lives. Like, it's crazy, man. Like, this guy is just still going strong. You love to see it. Chase Hooper, what people don't understand is that he came into the UFC somewhere between 19 to 21 years old, and he had a lot of growing up to do, but boy, has he done that, and now he's filling into his frame up at 155, and I like the recent performances. So, I mean, I think we know what the question is here. Are any of y'all taking a shot on the legendary future Hall of Famer and one of the most beloved fighters in the sport, Jimmy Miller? Anyone want to go first? Just go ahead. Whoever talks first.
I'll make it easy. It's a pass for me.
I don't mind. I'm just looking at the odds now. That's why I brought it up. I don't mind Jim Miller sub round 1 plus 3,000, boys. Like, what are we doing here? Sub round 1, Jim Miller about 4 years ago was like a lock in every fight that he fought. And now you want to give me plus 3,000 because Chase is good at grappling? Doesn't matter if you're good at grappling if you're almost dying after getting a massive right hand. I think sub round 1 is definitely live here. Didn't we see Jim Miller's last fight? Isn't Damon Jackson meant to be good at grappling? I mean, sub round 1 at plus 3,000 has my attention, but yes, okay, I'm picking the minus 900 to get it done. One thing I will say is that it doesn't go to decision. I think it got smashed, but I had seen it at like minus 150. I think it went to like minus 200. That's all right, because I feel like Chase will probably get his game going at some point if he doesn't get finished in the first round. So yeah, that's my takes on it. Minus 900, nothing crazy. Turn the minus 900 into an anti plus 3,000 I'll have something on that.
Listen, Jim definitely has a chance in round 1. I mean, Chase's biggest weakness is he's historically hittable as hell. Jim can crack, Jim can grapple, but also historically speaking, most of the times, not every time, but the majority of the times that Jim goes past round 1, he tends to slow down badly and things often don't go his way. I think if this goes past round 1, it'll be a similar case, but yeah, it doesn't take a genius to pick a minus 900. Does take a genius to pick a plus 600 and get it right, though. So if anyone is taking Jim and you get it and you win that, I'll give you your props, of course, but I'll take Hooper as a pure pick. Now, next up in the featherweight division, we got a matchup between Julian and Erosa. He's 13-11, taking on Darren Elkins, who's 29-11. Currently, they got it. Erosa minus 310. The comeback on Elkins is plus 260. Gentlemen, I'm not often used to seeing Erosa as this big of a dog. As this big of a favorite. But that being said, he's fighting a 40-year-old Darren Elkins who is named the Damage because he takes so much goddamn damage. But trivia, which both of y'all probably already know the answer to, who's been knocked out more between the two of them?
Erosa, for sure.
Oh yeah, by a fucking country mile too. And you know what's funny? I forgot the guy's name, but back in the day, not to show off my age, but I've been watching Darren Elkins a long time, right? And back in 2013, he knocked out this dude named Antonio Pato Carvalho, like a standing TKO in round 1. So he's done what needs to be done to Julian Erosa before in a UFC fight, granted, fucking 12, 13 years ago. But that being said, man, what kind of chance do y'all give Elkins? Because it seems like Erosa has a little bit left in the tank, but yeah, Erosa also has a very suspect chin, James. So what do you think?
It's a tough fight for me to call, which is kind of crazy at like a -3, -400. But I think if this gets into round 2 and round 3, if Elkins is still there, he's going to be doing some stuff, right? Like he ain't just going to be getting tooled up for 50 minutes. I don't believe so. I don't think Erosa is that type of fighter that he can do that to him. I think Erosa can hurt him early badly. I think Elkins is extremely slow. He's coming in there like my granddad, like extremely slow in round 1. But as the fight goes on, he gets his grappling going. We know how it goes. We saw against Pineda and throughout his entire career. I think there might be some value on Elkins, but I'm not playing it, man. I'm not playing it because I feel like that he probably gets hurt badly in round 1 and he might get finished. Erosa's been hurt a lot. Like you said, Erosa's been knocked out, man. The GOAT, Artem Lobov knocked out Julian Erosa. So anyone can do it. Fernando Padilla knocked him out not too long ago.
Sungwoo Choi. Oh, no.
Yeah,
Wait. Did Sungwoo Choi knock him out, or was it the Alex Caceres fight where he knocked him out, then illegally kneed him and got choked out?
No, Sungwoo Choi did that to Alex Caceres.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, got you.
Yeah. But I was on Sungwoo Choi against Erosa at the time and round 1 KO. At the time, I thought I was a genius, but seeing how their career went, if he doesn't do that, he probably gets drowned, So It's interesting how the market plays out. But yeah, loads of guys have cracked this guy early in round 1. Elkins just doesn't really have the skill set to do it, man. But if you go 15 minutes with Elkin, it's not an easy fight, Maybe he can do the JSP 15-minute grappling. I don't think Erosa has that skill set to do the 15-minute wrestling thing. I personally think he'll probably jump Gilly a few times. And that Elkins is unsubbable, right? Unless you snap his arm, like Charles Oliveira. If you snap a limb, yeah, okay, fair enough. Like the bones cake. But this guy can breathe out of his eyes, out of his ears, out of he must have a different mouth because you cannot submit this guy. Pineda had him in the tightest gillies. Who else had him in a guillotine? Ryan Hall. His spinning wheel kicked him. He was dropped on the floor. I thought the guy was unconscious. Then he gets in a guillotine and he just eats it for breakfast. He's in a full guard guillotine and somehow he just doesn't get submitted by Ryan Hall. I mean, that's Erosa's move, right? He's going to try and gilly you. So I have to pick that Erosa won't gilly him just because of what I've seen in his entire career. And if he doesn't gilly him, I feel like 15 minutes could be close. But yeah, I'm just passing on this one overall. If anything, I would take a shot on Erosa round 1 KO because of the speed difference. And it has happened recently against Cub Swanson, albeit. So that's like +500, 600. It's not a bad shot. But yeah, pass for me overall. I'll pick Erosa.
Gombas? Oh, you're muted, brother.
You guys covered a lot of the key points already, but I do think the money line, this is another spot where the money line doesn't match the total. Like, how can Erosa be, a 4-1 favorite, 3-1 favorite, and the under 2.5 be +100? Like, to me, that doesn't really make sense. Like, one of those is probably off. I do feel like Erosa is going to hurt him at some point, but, like, Erosa gets hurt a lot too, and I really think Elkins, process-wise, has been like one of the best and most reliable fighters. Like, what he's going to try to do every single time, and it's like a great guillotine versus a guy who sticks his head in the worst spot possible and somehow gets out of it. So I feel like that's how the fight's that's gonna be the fight right there. Elkins is gonna shoot and he's gonna put his head in a dangerous spot. Rose is going to go for his guillotine, and we're going to see what happens from there. And I actually do predict that Erosa is the first guy to get that, or I should say, probably not the first guy in a really long time to get that guillotine. He's one of the best I think it's probably one of the most underrated guillotines in the UFC. Like, to me, it's one of the best, and people don't really talk about it in that tier. But you could see, like, he makes those adjustments. Like, I'm sure you guys could tell, like, knowing what but he immediately starts going to all the adjustments necessary to make sure the guy's just not getting out of it. He has long arms, does the right thing with his legs. So it's a fun fight. I'll go with Erosa by submission. That being said, obviously, they call him the damage. He's taking a lot of damage. If Erosa hits Elkins the right way, like, he probably gets knocked out. That being said, Erosa's been knocked out, to your point, a lot of times too. So I think it's probably fireworks here.
Yeah, no, I'm gonna go Erosa as well, and I'm glad you brought up those points about his guillotine because I'm a big fan of the guillotine. The guillotine gets a bad name because when you don't get the guillotine, sometimes you end up on your back, you give up that round. But good guillotine guys need to be respected because a good guillotine is fucking deadly. Look at Charles Du Bronx Oliveira, man. So look at Julian Erosa, god damn it, you know. So but I think it could be that, like you said, but I think he could also, just use that length, pick him apart a little bit, head kick knockout like he did to Jamal Emmers on Contender Series, flying knees. You never know. So yeah, I'll go with Rosa here as well. Now, next up in the light heavyweight division. The middleweight division. We got former light heavyweight Michal Oleksiejczuk. He's 19-9, taking on Cedriquez Dumas, who's 10-2. Currently, they got it. Michal Oleksiejczuk, Lord Michal. There's two lords on this card, Xiaonan and Michal. Who's doing the Lord parlay? Someone let me know. But so did I say the odds? 180 Michal plus 155 Dumas. And so here's my thing, man. I'm a big fan of Michal, right? Like since the debut when he beat up Khalil Roundtree for 3 rounds, right? I've had some ups and some downs with Michal, going out there. A big bet against Jean Vellante, that Russian dude that just charged him. I think Antigulov was his name. It's been a while. But then I've also lost my ass on Michal. Max bet him against OSP. He's literally doing whatever he wants to OSP in round 1. And then round 2, he gets Von Flue choked. And then I also lost on that Kevin Holland fight where we're coming out there. I've been on a fade Kevin Holland world tour, minus the Gunny fight and minus the Chiesa fight. I didn't bet those fights, but besides that, I've been betting against Holland every fight. And we go out there, we drop Holland, and 2 seconds later he gets armbarred. Yeah, that kind of shit really pisses me off. And then here's my biggest thing with Michal. Obviously, I love his style. Anytime you're a marauder, you're like not even the most athletic guy, and you're going toe-to-toe with Khalil Roundtree, you know what I'm saying? And you're dropping body shots, big punches upstairs. Like, I love Michal, but my issue is I've seen zero evolution in Michal's game whatsoever. Like, literally zero, none. And that last fight against Shara, again, people are so apt to say stuff like, oh, but it was just Shara. Just like, oh, it was just Topuria. Oh, it was just Islam Makhachev. It was just this guy. Yeah, but I thought that Michal looked fucking terrible there. I felt like that was almost like, is this guy declining? Or because he's still young. So it's like, if he made a big switch up, he could potentially get in the right direction. And guess what, gentlemen? He did make a switch up. He's no longer training in his shed or garage in Poland. He actually went to the Fighting Nerds for 6 weeks. Now, 6 weeks, is better than 6 days, but it's not better than 6 months. But 6 weeks is still better than nothing, right? So 6 weeks, were you Carlos Pratis's punching bag for those 6 weeks, or did the coaches take you under their wing and kind of tell you that, hey, man, so one thing I got to tell you all this. Either on Fight Pass or on YouTube, there is, John Gooden, right? The UK commentator for the UFC. So he went to Brazil to the Fighting Nerds gym, and he did like an hour feature on them. And their coach has a very interesting philosophy, right? He's like, I got 60 fighters in my gym. Now, I can't make all 60 of my fighters UFC world champs, but what I can do is make all 60 of my fighters the best versions of themselves. Now, is 6 weeks there enough for Michal to come out here as the best version of himself? Does he even need to be the best version of himself against Cedriquez Dumas? So that's where I'm at with Michal. I'm glad he made that move. Now, as far as Cedriquez, I know he gets a lot of heat, and I was one of the guys that bet Josh Fremd, I think plus 180, plus 190, whatever it was, one of the best bets of that year. But since that point, it's been a little hit and miss, but I do want to give Cedriquez Dumas credit, because from looking like a literal amateur, like an NFC fighter against Josh Fremd, to that last fight against Chaluen, my memory of that fight was completely off. I don't know why I thought that Chaluen had an argument to win that fight. Dude, Cedriquez did whatever he wanted the first 2 rounds. I saw some improvements in his hands. He controlled the pace, and then he kind of coasted the last round, lost that one. But But here's a talking point. One weapon that Cedriquez has is a body lock takedown. Look, I'm not saying it's no fucking Islam Makhachev or Habib body lock takedown, but you don't need one of those to take down McCall. I mean, McCall gets taken down. McCall has 48% takedown defense in a big sample size. Okay, so it's not going to take much to take this guy down. I do think Cedriquez can come out here and take down McCall with that body lock, potentially take his back and have grappling upside. My issue with Cedriquez Dumas is it seems like at any point he can just fall apart. And yeah, like for example, let's pull up that Ruzaboyev fight, and all anyone will ever talk about is the eye poke, right? But let's actually talk about what happened in that fight, that sequence. So he gets eye poked. Now people act like he took the eye poke and then he went down. That's not what happened. He took the eye poke. He asked for a timeout. He didn't get that timeout. Then Ruzaboyev lands the finishing shot. Cedriquez covers up, fight over. Like, even if you got eye poked, which I think he did, you need to circle on the outside, go like, you know, like, you know, give me a break. And if the rep doesn't give you a break, you need to still keep, you know, circling on the outside to try to get your wits back about you. And this guy just lost all composure as soon as that happened and just gave the fight up. So yeah, I think he could fall apart at any moment. And with the marauding pressure of McCall, body shots, upstairs, all that stuff. Yeah, McCall should definitely be favored here. And my pick is McCall. I just do have some concerns about the lack of evolution in McCall's game and this body lock takedown of Cedriquez Dumas potentially being a factor here. So that's where I'm at. Gombas, what do you think?
Pretty much in the exact same spot as you. Like, I'm picking McCall. I don't have any interest in this fight from a betting perspective. Gun to head, like I think maybe over 1.5. Not a terrible look, but even that, I don't like some of Dumas's MMA instincts. Like, he has a lot of physical attributes, obviously, but just certain positions and certain decisions he makes, like it just always strikes me as someone. His body's UFC caliber, his mind is not.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm picking McCall as well. I think the main thing about him going to the Fighting Nerds is not necessarily, you know, the physical improvements or the technical improvements that he can make in 6 weeks. More the mental side of the game. You know, he's around good guys. He's around positive guys that are doing big things in the sport. He'll come in with a good game plan, most likely. And just being around that energy will probably boost him in the fight. Because if you remember his last fight, he was training in his garage, in his own home. Maybe it wasn't his own home, but he was training in his garage and he was talking about retirement. He said on Instagram, yeah, Shara, I know the Shara fight. I'm going to lose the fight. You know, obviously I'll lose. Once I'll lose, I'll retire. Something like that. So that's never a good sign. But him being in the Fighting Nerds is definitely a good sign based on, it seems like he's got his mojo back. Mentality's there. He's going to come into it fresh. If he comes into it fresh, I think he's going to win the fight. He hits very hard. He hits to the body. He hits to the head. I do not think that Cedric Dumas is an MMA fighter in terms of the mentality. You know, I think when he gets hit, when the going gets tough, he can crumble. He did crumble against Fremd. He didn't like the pressure against Tululin, who is a 10 and 11 and 10 fighter. So he's lost as many fights as he's won. He's now cut from the UFC. Cedric Dumas also didn't like the pressure at times from Azaitar. Those guys are not on the level and don't bring the heat or pressure that Michel brings. So I think Dumas can win via the body lock, via the grappling, but I think it's very slim margins. I think Michel's probably going to turn his lights off, to be honest.
Now, next up in the flyweight division, we got a matchup between Sumu Derji, he's 16-7, taking on Mitch Raposo, who's 9-2. Currently, they got it. Okay, I see what's going on. Currently, they got it. Sumu Derji minus 175. The comeback on Mitch Raposo is plus 150. So I actually just texted my friend Cody Durden about this fight because he trained with Raposo. He actually did like a little, you know, week or two at the New England cartel. So he got to train with Raposo. And then with Sue, so Cody beat up Sue's boy, Orichi Lang, but then Cody and Sue met up at ATT because they were both training there. So like it was kind of an interesting situation. But anyways, I just texted Cody Durden. I said, who you got? He's got Mitch. So interesting. He's got Mitch for the upset. Look, as far as how I see this fight going down, Sumu Derji kind of has a bit of a version, I'm not saying it's the same quality, of course, but a version of the McGregor/Rufy style, kind of, long, flowy, pull counters, all that kind of stuff. Maybe not the same dexterity and arsenal of kicks or anything like that, but wide stance, pull counters. That's what he loves to do. Super long for flyweight. And there's been big issues on the mat. Now, I do think he's tightened up his takedown defense quite a bit, because people have been exposing this for years. I'm saying before his UFC days, this shit was happening. But nowadays, it's harder to take him down. But once you actually get him down, you can have success against him. But I saw him attacking for subs in some fights recently. I see that he's patching up that area of his game. I like that. And then with Mitch Raposo, I got to be completely honest. When he fought Jake Hadley on Contender Series, I was thinking that, no disrespect, but I was thinking that this guy is kind of harmless at the UFC level. Like, when you're a male fighter and you have a 64-inch reach, I just think that he's too small. He's simply too small. He's not imposing enough. And I know on his regionals, he starched, a bunch of cans, that's not disrespecting them. That's simply what they were, just calling it how it is. But when it comes to these levels, I don't think it translates. The fact that he got to a split with Andre Lima, but that's again back to like a judge scored it 30-27 Valentin last week. Like, I'm by no means saying Torres Finney looked good. That's not what I'm saying. But I'm saying, how the fuck could you score that 30-27 Valentin? That's what I'm saying. So how could you score the Andre Lima fight for Raposo? Like, someone explain that to me. I don't have an explanation for it, but I will say this: he took his ass whooping like a man. He didn't come out with a busted up face. He didn't, he took it, man. So respect to him. And I think he has gotten better. And I think he does have a little bit of pop. My issue with Raposo, he's too small. It's going to be really tough to close that distance with that short ass reach. I mean, I think Sue's got an 8-inch reach advantage or something like that. And we're talking about flyweight. So now can Raposo mix in some takedowns? Possibly. I mean, he took down Lima for a second. But Lima has those Jose Aldo qualities to him. Just sprung back up like a cat. Not sure if Sue can do the same thing. So maybe there's an argument for Mitch here, but ultimately I think Sue keeps him on the outside, picks him apart, and probably wins a decision here. So which one of y'all got a stronger take on this?
Yeah, I guess I kind of have some strong takes. So when I first saw the fight announced, I thought I might have to max bet Sumudaji. So I looked into it and I decided that I won't max bet him, but I do think he's going to win. And I guess, to give Raposo some credit, because obviously, you gave Sumudaji the pick. So I'll give Raposo some credit. I think he has a chance to hurt Sumudaji here. We've seen Sumudaji cracked on the feet and hurt a couple of times. Charles Johnson almost had him out in round 2. And outside of that, he's been cracked on the feet and hurt a few times. Mitch does hit hard. It's just going to be tough for him to close that range. If he is able to close that range, he's going to have to take some licks to get there. But, he does have power. He could land a shot for sure. Outside of that, Sumudaji still has issues on the ground. I know he shored some stuff up against Charles Johnson, but, the Charles Johnson one, he never really settled. He was always throwing his legs up. He reversed Charles a couple of times. He threw up arm bars and triangle chokes. So I think his grappling looked better there because he was never flat backed on the mat, right? And I think I think he can still get taken down. And maybe if you pass his guard, maybe if you're sitting in side control, then I think the grappling deficiencies start to show itself again. Because I don't think he's ever going to be, he won all the grappling exchanges against Charles Johnson, which no one would say that before that fight, right? But I think that those iterations of the sequences we saw they don't tell the full tale of his actual grappling. Because I think people are saying, he's got no deficiencies anymore. Like, look, he won all the grappling against Charles. I think there's a little bit of context there. So, that's where Raposo can have some chances. Overall, I think the length for Sumudaji is going to be too much. And the experience in the octagon is going to be too much. Sue, a lot of these losses that we speak about were a few years ago. I feel like he's coming into his prime now. Much better showing against Charles Johnson in a fight that he could have won. It was a very close fight. He had an argument to win the fight against, a very, very good fighter in Charles. So, yeah, I'm going to pick Mudaji here. I think he can get a finish. Sumudaji, this submission is like plus 2,000 on a couple of books. And he went for it many, many times against Charles Johnson. I know that Mitch Raposo is going to have to close range to win the fight, whether that's in close quarters boxing or in grappling, he's going to have to close range. He ain't going to win it from the other side of the octagon. So when you close range, shit happens in the grappling might just occur, right? So I think that that's a good chance for the plus 2,000 to hit. And I do think that he's working on some skills, DAS, triangle choke, all of which he put Charles Johnson in. So, and Mitch Raposo has been submitted under the UFC banner before, Dana White's Contender Series. So yeah, I'll say Sumudaji wins. I'll say he wins via submission for the plus 1,800.
Wow. That's bold right there. Now, Gombas, before you go, I just want to say one thing. If Sue wins this fight, the fight I want to see, unless you're going to feed the two of them to prospects, the fight I want to see is Sumu Derji versus O'Day Osborne. That's what I want to see. Tell me that fight is not fucking badass. Gombas, who you got here?
Yeah, I'm going to take Mitch here. I do feel like he's going to potentially have some issues closing the distance, and I think he isn't going to I don't think Sue is easy to hold down necessarily, like especially that first level. But I like Raposo's double leg. I think he just got a raw deal in his last fight. Like, Lima's a killer. That was a really hard fight for him, and he still managed to hang in there for 15 minutes. Like, a judge even gave him that fight, which I don't agree with, to be clear, but it just goes to show, like, he didn't go out there and embarrass himself. You know what I mean? When I feel like a lot of guys I think Lima would embarrass a lot of guys at 125. If you go back to the Contender Series, he took Hadley down a few times, and, eventually Hadley took him down and choked him out, which, like, isn't really relevant. Like, it's not going to happen here. Obviously, Sue's a good, long, rangy striker, but we know his weakness by now. And if you look at the Tim Elliott fight, like, Elliott was the favorite against him. Like, I thought he should have even been a bigger favorite there. Elliott, his first couple times he tried to take him down, if you go back and watch that fight, he was going for single legs, and he was picking Sue's long leg up in the air and trying to finish that way, and it wasn't working. Raposo doesn't do that. Like, he shoots double legs. Like, he gets in on your hips. I think you have a way better chance of taking down Sumudaji with double legs than single legs. Because, like you guys mentioned, he's so long for the division. Like, if you pick up his leg in the air, he's just going to stand there and be like, okay, now what? So I do think Raposo could get takedowns here. On the feet, I do favor Sue, but I don't think it's like some blowout there either. So just in a fight where I could genuinely see like paths to victory for both guys here, like I'll side with the underdog.
All right, so we got me and James on Sue. We got Gombas and Cody Durden on Mitch Raposo. Now, next up in the middleweight division, we got a matchup between Tresean Gore, he's 5-2, taking on Marco Tulio, who's 13-1. Currently, they got it Marco Tulio minus 365. The comeback on Tresean Gore's plus 300. I feel like I need to talk about this first because, I mean, Tresean Gore, former NFC fighter, I literally called his pro debut, like as in commentated it. And I didn't even get to interview him in the cage because like him and his opponent, they had such insane beef that everyone had to be separated and it was about to be a riot / brawl. So I didn't even get to interview Gore after that debut. I think the dude he fought, his name was like Prince Ellerby or something, but like, when I saw that fight, I was like, okay, this guy really stands out. Like, only 1-0, like clear, the techniques are there too. Like, we'll talk about the athleticism and all that stuff, but like very, very hard kicks. You've been seeing that nasty guillotine. Like, damn, it's like an executioner choke he hit on Josh Fremd. But guys, please, I know y'all two aren't going to pull this, but like I've been hearing breakdowns and I've been hearing things and people talking about Tresean Gore sucks. And this, guys, Tresean Gore came into the UFC at 3-0. 3-0. He never got a chance to develop outside the UFC. Like, what do you guys expect? So, yeah, if a guy that's like, super seasoned and experienced gets knocked out by Cody Brundage in the first round, yeah, Julian Marquez is old as fuck, but I'm saying like if a young stud with experience did, then I'm like, yeah, that's a red flag. But like, bro, Cody Brundage has like 15 to 20 fights. Tresean had like 5 or like 4 pro fights at the time. Like, come on, man. Like, you don't hold stuff like that against him. At least I don't. Whereas now we fast forward a little bit. He's still only 5-2, guys. He's had less than 10 pro fights, but at least you're not that 3-0 kid anymore. So you're going to be seeing these little incremental improvements every single fight. So yeah, maybe he had zero business when he first came in as a 3-0 fighter, which it's like, come on, man. Like I want at least 10 pro fights, depending who the prospect is, but like, 7 or 8 at least. And to come in at 3-0, yeah, he just simply wasn't ready. But he's had to grow up under the bright lights. And, he got out of his comfort zone. I think he's training at the lab now in Arizona. So I like what I'm seeing from Xiaonan as far as trying to progress his career. And narrative-wise, he just beat up Mackenzie Dern's boyfriend. Is he going to beat up Norma Dumont's boyfriend? But listen, man, on the other side here with Marco Tulio, let me tell you something. This kid ain't no 5-2. This guy's 13-1. So this guy has paid real dues outside the UFC, was an LFA champ, I'm pretty sure, fights out of shoot the box. And when you talk about one of the most important things that a fighter can have is confidence. And this guy just reeks of ultimate confidence. I mean, how can you not be, bro? Like, look how he fights. Look at the finishes he's getting. Look at the results. Dating Norma Dumont. Like, this guy's literally the most confident man in the UFC, and confidence is a drug in this sport, and experience counts for a lot. So, of course, Xiaonan is dangerous, and Xiaonan does have a chance to finish anybody. But I think the volume, the experience, and the thing about Marco that people don't understand is, yeah, Marco knocked out his last opponent, and he does come from shoot to box. And from time to time, you will get excited, flying knees, punches and bunches, whatever the case may be. But where it's really at when Marco is on the ground, Marco is a dangerous, dangerous black belt. And I wouldn't be like, I think like if Marco wants to lay and pray, he can lay and pray. But if Marcos wants to have like a shoot to box type war, he can do that too. So I just think there's so many more paths to victory for Marco Tulio, whereas with Trey, it's going to have to be the devastating finish. And it's hard for me to see Marco Tulio in his current form getting devastatingly finished by a guy much less experienced than him. So for that reason, I'm going Marco Tulio to win this fight and to continue being the most confident man in the UFC. Which one of y'all got a strong take on this?
Yeah, I'll say something. I got a fairly strong take. I really do think Marco Tulio is going to win this one. I think he's some of the safest chalk on the card. I think Xiaonan has a chance to knock him out. He's very athletic. He hits hard, and I've seen it happen to Tulio before. But outside of that, I think Tulio is way better skill for skill. Much better grappler, much better wrestler, much better striker. I honestly think he's better in all realms of the fight. And that's going to be the tail of the fight. One little point I'll make is that I saw something today. So Marco Tulio, someone tried to rob him like yesterday. I think it was on his way to the airport, and they smashed his window in Brazil. I believe it was in Brazil. They smashed his window, try to rob him and Norma Dumont. But I don't know what happened. I think the guy drove away. They didn't get it. And then there was some translation saying that Tulio has come out and said that someone has to pay for this. He's really angry, and Xiaonan is going to pay for the botched robbery. So that's some random shit. But yeah, man, I think Tulio's going to make Xiaonan pay. I think he's going to finish him this weekend.
Gombas?
Yeah, I'll go with Tulio here. I feel like he does have some flaws in his game, but I don't necessarily think they'll be exploited in this fight. I just think his power, he really does pack serious power. And I just see him, when I envision this fight, like I just see him connecting with Gore. Like I think he finds a knockout. Even if he's not looking minus 300 on minutes, like I just think eventually he's going to find the finish.
And last but not least, in the bantamweight division, we got a matchup between Haley Cowan, finally making a return. Don't hold your breath. We still got time till Saturday. She's 7-3, taking on Nora Cornole, who's 8-2. Currently, they got it Cornole minus 175. The comeback on Cowan's plus 150. I've liked the aggression of Cornole, not so much the takedown defense. And with Cowan, I'm not a fan of her style, but I know that cage pushing inside and then on the outside kind of, Holly Holm, makes some sounds. I know that style has won a lot of fights before, and this is the first fight of the night. Fans don't show up early, so you're going to be hearing those sounds. So what do y'all think? Because I don't really have a hot take on this. Do any of y'all?
No.
Gombas, you want to take this first?
Yeah, I like Cohen in this spot. Like I just feel like she has all the grappling upside. Like she's gonna push a clinch, and I feel like she's also kind of just like gotten unfortunate with a couple decisions where if like they had went her way, she'd probably be like differently regarded. Like I don't think she's a top tier talent in the UFC or anything, but like I thought she could have got the Horth fight, for example, and I think she did get the fight against Light or Lete in the Contender Series, but even that was like a split, and I don't know. I just don't like Cornwall's takedown defense at all, really. Like even I think it was the Mullins fight. Like she was losing to Mullins before she found a finish, and I think Cohen's just a better grappler than that. And yeah, I mean on the feet, I favor Cornwall. I just don't trust her to keep it there. And again, this is another one of those fights where I do see like a very real path for both fighters to win. And to me, it just makes it pretty simple to take the plus 150.
James?
Yeah, I don't have a strong take, man. It's a lower level women's fight. Anything can happen. I think I personally picked Nora to finish her. Cowan has 2 losses. They're both inside the distance. 95% of Nora's wins are inside the distance. I don't even count Jocelyn Edwards' one as a win because, in my opinion, that was pretty clear loss. She robbed the win there. So if it goes to decision, probably she's had some grappling success. I just feel like the aggression, the power, and honestly, even the grappling of Nora can win this fight. Now, what I mean by that is Haley Cowan, I don't think she's good submission grappler at all. I think she's poor when she gets taken down herself. So, yes, she might push the grappling, but Nora has some reversals in her bag. We've seen it against Jocelyn Edwards, who I rate as a better fighter overall and even grappler than this chick. So, if she's able to reverse and get on top, I think she can go to work and even find herself a finish. So, Nora inside the distance for me.
Yeah, I don't know. Which one's heads, which one's tails? What do y'all think? Which one should be heads? Which one should be tails?
Don't know, bro. Nora heads.
Nora heads? Okay.
Nora heads.
Hold on. Got the heads. So we're going Nora. So let's see.
I'm gonna have to pass now. I can't go against that omen.
Yeah, I know. I mean, this was A1 analysis with the coin, So, guys, firstly, I want to thank y'all so much for taking the time to speak with me right here, right now on Half the Battle. It's always a pleasure. Before I get my guest out of here, I want to thank the fans. Man, y'all are absolutely incredible. Do me a huge favor. Please subscribe. Once I get to 7K subscribers, I'm doing a giveaway. And when I say giveaway, I don't mean that I'm going to shout you out. No, I mean, I'm going to send you autographed gear from UFC fighters. That's what I mean when I say a giveaway. When I get to 8K, same thing. When I get to 9K, same thing. When I get to 10K, I'm giving away a signed glove from the UFC Hall of Famer, Michael Bisping. So y'all, I've been seeing the numbers on my analytics. A lot of people that watch my show aren't subscribed. So do me a huge favor and please subscribe. And I'd really appreciate that. Also, I want to give a huge shout out to my boy Meticulous for these incredible graphics that not just on the show, but the thumbnails. I mean, how fucking great were the thumbnails this week? Meticulous, you're the man. Thank you so much. Not just, as a business partner, but as a friend. I love you, brother. So thank you. And of course to the fans, again, I can't thank y'all enough. Not to my guest, Lucrative, James Blissett. The fans can follow you at Lucrative James. Any message for them before I get you out of here?
Yeah, shout out to the fans, man. If nobody was watching, we would still be talking about this, but it'd probably be a freeway video call. It wouldn't be live, So shout out to the fans. You're on YouTube now. You can go to Lucrative James if you want to find more about my shows. I've got Parlay Madness coming out tomorrow with my man JB. Shout out to JB. Hopefully you guys can tune in for that. And Gombas, Dan, it's been a pleasure. Hopefully you guys can come on my show one of these days and we'll cook up some crazy parlays. Be a little bit of degenerates like we are deep down somewhere, even though we might not want to portray it. So, yeah, man, thanks for having me on, Dan. I appreciate it, and hopefully we catch this weekend.
Gombas, it's always a pleasure. The fans can follow you at Bets and Picks MMA, the Magic and Andrew MMA show, Friday nights at 9 p.m. That's required reading. Any message for the fans, Andrew?
Yeah, appreciate you guys for watching. Dan, thanks for having me on. James, it was good seeing you, and hopefully we all do well this weekend.
Absolutely. So thank y'all again so much. Make sure y'all hit up my sponsor, Bet105. Use my promo code HALFTHEBATTLE. Again, shout out to the fans. Shout out to Meticulous for the art. Shout out to my guests, James and Andrew. I'm very, very grateful for all of you. And there's one thing I have to say. Until the next time, let's cash these bets.